There is one task, and I think most people have one, that has been sitting on your list for longer than it should. You think about it regularly. You tell yourself, today is the day, and then you don't do it. And by the time evening comes around, it's still there. And you feel a little worse about yourself than you did that morning.
That cycle, the awareness, the intention, the avoidance, the guilt, is one of the most universal human experiences there is, and here's where most procrastination advice goes wrong. It treats this as a time management problem. It isn't, it's an emotional one, and solving an emotional problem with a scheduling solution is why most productivity advice doesn't stick.
That reframe alone already feels different. Let's get into it. Welcome to Clarity and Coins, the show about money, mindset, health, and everything in between. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Alex. Today we're on the growth pillar, and we're covering procrastination, not with a list of productivity hacks, but by going after the actual roots of why it happens and what genuinely interrupts it. 5 specific points. Let's start with the most important one. Point 1. And this is the foundation everything else builds on. Procrastination is not laziness. Research consistently shows that when we procrastinate, we are not avoiding the task itself. We are avoiding the emotions associated with it. The anxiety of not knowing if we can do it well enough. The boredom of something repetitive and draining. The resentment of something we didn't choose to do. The vulnerability of starting something that genuinely matters and risking that it won't be good enough.
So the task isn't the problem. The feeling the task brings up is the problem.
Exactly. And this changes the approach entirely. Telling a procrastinator to just do it is like telling someone afraid of heights to just look down. The instruction ignores what's actually in the way. The real question isn't, why can't I get this done? It's, what feeling am I trying to avoid by not starting?
When I ask myself that honestly, the answer is almost always fear. Fear that it won't be good enough. Fear that I'll start and realize I'm in over my head. The task itself isn't the barrier, that fear underneath it is.
And just naming it is already part of the work. Once you identify what you're actually avoiding, you can address that directly, rather than just fighting with yourself about why you still haven't opened the document.
It also removes the self-judgment from the equation, which I think is huge. If I know I'm avoiding a feeling rather than being lazy, I can have some compassion for myself while still deciding to move forward.
That self-compassion piece is actually point 5, and it matters more than most people think. We'll get there.
Point 2, and this one I think will surprise people.
Most people believe the sequence works like this: you feel motivated, and then you start. But the research points to the opposite. You start, even in the smallest way, and motivation follows. It is not the cause of action, it is a byproduct of it.
So waiting to feel ready or inspired before beginning is the very thing keeping you stuck.
That's the trap. The practical application is what's sometimes called the 2-minute rule. You commit to doing just 2 minutes of the task. Not the whole thing, not even a meaningful chunk. 2 minutes, and then you're allowed to stop. The goal isn't progress, the goal is to break the inertia. What almost always happens is that once you've started, continuing feels far less difficult than stopping did.
I've experienced this so many times without understanding what was happening. I'll avoid something for days, force myself to open it, and within 10 minutes, I'm genuinely engaged and wondering why I waited so long.
Because the start was the actual obstacle, not the task. The brain builds resistance to something precisely because it hasn't been begun. Beginning deflates that resistance almost immediately.
And committing to just 2 minutes removes the pressure entirely. You're not promising yourself a productive session. You're just agreeing to open the thing. That feels manageable, even on the most resistant days.
Low commitment, high return. That's the whole mechanic of it. Point 3. Vague tasks don't get done if your list says, work on the project, or sort finances, or respond to that email. Your brain has no clear entry point, and faced with ambiguity, it stalls. This is often mistaken for procrastination when it's actually just a planning gap.
Because you don't actually know what doing it looks like. You don't know where to start, so you don't start at all.
The fix is to always define the very next physical action. Not the goal, the next single step. Not work on the presentation, but open the slide deck and write the title slide text. Not sort finances, but log into the account and write down last month's balance. Specific, concrete, small enough to begin in 5 minutes or less. That is what a task needs to look like to actually happen.
This explains why I can have a to-do list full of things and still feel paralyzed. The items on my list look like tasks, but they're actually outcomes. And outcomes don't tell you what to physically do next.
Write the next action when you're not under pressure, so that when you sit down, you can begin immediately without having to figure anything out first. The decision cost is invisible but real.
3 in procrastination is emotional avoidance, not laziness. Motivation follows action, it doesn't precede it. And vague tasks don't get done. You need a specific, physical next step written down in advance. 2 more.
These last to deal with the space around you and the way you speak to yourself after procrastinating. Both matter more than most people expect. Point 4. Your environment is either pulling you toward focus or away from it, and most people have never deliberately set it up. If your phone is on the desk, your brain will reach for it. Not because you're undisciplined, but because it offers instant, effortless stimulation right next to something that requires sustained effort.
So the answer isn't to be stronger than the distraction. It's to not be in the same room as the distraction.
That's it exactly. Remove friction from the things you want to do and add friction to the things that pull you away. Phone in another room, tabs closed, materials ready before you sit down. Even your physical space sends a signal, a consistent work environment, the same chair, the same conditions repeated over time trains your brain to shift into focus more quickly when those cues appear.
It's the same friction principle we've talked about before, in the diet episode, in the emergency fund episode. Make the right thing the easy thing, and make the distraction require a little deliberate effort to access.
Willpower is expensive and finite. Your environment should be doing the protective work before willpower is even required.
I started putting my phone in a different room during morning work hours about 3 months ago. It felt dramatic at first. Now it's just the condition under which I actually get things done. The environment change did more than any amount of trying to be more disciplined ever did. And point 5, which feels counterintuitive the first time you hear it.
Most people assume that feeling bad about procrastinating will push them to do better next time, but research shows the opposite. People who forgave themselves after procrastinating were less likely to procrastinate on the next task. People who held onto the guilt procrastinated more.
Because guilt and shame are uncomfortable emotions, and we already established that we avoid discomfort. So guilt about procrastinating creates more of the emotional avoidance that caused the procrastination to begin with.
It's the same cycle closing on itself. Self-compassion lowers the emotional charge and makes returning to the task easier. You acknowledge what happened, you let it go, and you come back with a cleaner state. That isn't making excuses. That is the thing that actually works according to the data.
I spent years thinking I needed to be harder on myself to be more productive. It never worked. It just made me feel worse and avoid more. Being kinder to myself after a missed day actually led to getting more done. I just didn't have a reason for why until now.
The practice is simple. When you notice you've procrastinated, say to yourself, "That happened. I understand why. What's the one step I can take right now? And then take it. No extended self-analysis, no guilt spiral, just the next step.
5 points. Name the emotion you're avoiding. Start before you feel ready. Define one specific next action. Design your environment deliberately and let go of the guilt after a setback. What's the one thing to do today?
Before you close whatever you're doing right now, write down one specific, physical next action for the thing you have been avoiding most. Not the project, not the goal. The next single step. Open the document. Send a reply to one person. Write the first sentence and stop. That's it. One line. And tomorrow morning, that line is the first thing you do before anything else, for just 2 minutes.
And if you stop after 2 minutes, it's still a win. You broke the pattern. You proved to yourself that starting is possible. That's what changes how the next day begins.
Progress is built one started task at a time, not one perfectly finished one. That's a wrap on episode 8 of Clarity and Coins. Procrastination isn't a character flaw, it's a pattern, and like any pattern, once you understand it, you can interrupt it.
Share this with someone who has been putting something off for too long. They'll know who they are. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. New episodes every week on money, mindset, health, and self-improvement.
Remember, clarity is the first coin.
See you in the next one.